Accidentally played my private date video at work and it was a total nightmare. A few weeks ago, I was trying to impress my date by taking her to a fancy condo showroom where I work. The views were stunning, and one thing led to another. We ended up making a video of our encounter. She's a cam girl, so she was totally on board with it. Until that day, my phone's slideshow feature had only shown me pictures of my cat, some cool scenery, and my meals from restaurants. Fast forward to a couple of weeks later. While waiting for the elevator at work, I pulled out my phone to kill some time. 2 of the elevators were out of service, and a crowd was building up. Suddenly, I got a notification about a news story. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tapped it open. To my horror, the slideshow featuring those explicit photos and videos from my date started playing right in front of me. The background music blared, drawing the attention of everyone behind me. I quickly hit the shutter, but it was too late. I felt my face turn crimson and hurriedly walked away, but I could hear the giggles of 2 girls in the crowd. I was mortified. This has to be the most embarrassing moment of my life. Honestly, I've thought about quitting my job and going off the grid just to avoid facing anyone who might have seen that slideshow. It's safe to say I'm double-checking my phone settings from now on.
I sipped on a spider at 2 a.m. and now I'm forever done with orange juice. It was around 2 a.m. last night and I was half asleep, reaching for some orange juice on my nightstand. Just needed a little sip to ease me back into my dream world. I took a sip, but then I felt something weird move on my tongue. At first, I thought it was ice. Spoiler alert, it wasn't ice. The sensation kept moving. In a panic, I grabbed whatever it was and flung it across the room. Turns out, it was a big spider. Still alive and staring at me like I had just crashed its late-night party. I freaked out, killed it, and then sat there on the edge of my bed, completely awake. My mouth was tingling, and I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. In that moment, I truly understood the essence of Katy Perry's Wide Awake. I wasn't just awake, I had entered a whole new level of awareness. From that point on, orange juice was officially off the menu. I accidentally turned a trim into a trip to the never cutting hair near the toilet again. My pubic hair had gotten a bit unruly and was becoming a nuisance. It kept getting caught in my underwear, and since I have a pretty thick bush, I decided to give it a trim with some scissors. I wasn't concerned about how it looked, since I'm not sexually active, just wanted it manageable, without the hassle of shaving and dealing with ingrown hairs. So there I was, sitting over the toilet, snipping away some of the longer hairs. Unfortunately, I got a bit too close, and ended up accidentally cutting a small section of my labia minora. Before I knew it, the scissors slipped from my hand and fell straight into the toilet. I let out a surprised curse and suddenly realized that I was bleeding. It wasn't a huge cut, more like a paper cut, but the pain was pretty intense and seemed to shoot down my left leg. It's definitely an experience I won't forget anytime soon. After 2 hours in the heat, I misheard a McDonald's employee and panicked a bit. I stood in line for 2 hours in the brutal March heat to get my vaccine shot. Feeling fine afterward, I decided to grab some food at the nearby McDonald's. When I approached the only employee there, she looked up and asked, "You are dead?" I thought I misheard her, so I replied, "Huh?" She repeated, "You are dead?" "Excuse me?" I said, confused. "You are dead?" she asked again. I started to feel alarmed. No. Why would you think that? Then she moved to the cash register and asked again, in a thick, West African accent, "Can I take your order?" It wasn't until I got back to my hotel an hour later that it hit me. The poor woman wasn't asking if I was dead. She was simply trying to confirm my order. With the heat making me feel a bit woozy, I mixed up what she was saying. To me, it sounded just like, "You are dead?" She must have thought I was completely clueless. Hey, silver lining. I'm definitely not dead.
Bought a new circular saw and realized I put the blade on backwards after cutting a board. I'm a 44-year-old guy who's not exactly a handyman but can usually get by for a side. For a project I was working on, I needed to attach some 2x4s to drywall, so I headed to Lowe's and picked up a jigsaw. To my surprise, that $30 jigsaw wasn't cutting it. Literally, the blade kept getting super hot, and I could see smoke rising from the wood while it barely made any progress. So, I went back today and bought a $70 circular saw, hoping it'd do the job better. Once I got home, I pulled out the manual, found the lock lever and managed to get the blade on and locked in place. Feeling confident, I revved it up a bit. It didn't die on me, so I thought I was ready to roll. I did a tiny test cut, and everything seemed fine. I was committed now. As I started cutting, things got incredibly smoky. I figured it was just the sawdust, no worse than what I dealt with using the jigsaw. But when I finished the cut and the blade began to slow down, I noticed something alarming. The blade was spinning in the wrong direction. Turns out, I had put the circular saw blade on backwards and just cut a board with the back of the teeth. Lesson learned. Dad tries to relive his glory days and almost drowns in front of his kids. Last weekend, my wife was working, leaving me alone with our 2 kids, a scenario that turned out to be pretty hectic. I finally carved out some alone time when both kids settled down. My 2-year-old was napping, and my 8-year-old was engrossed in Minecraft. I decided to take a relaxing bath, thinking this could be my little escape. Of course, alone time as a parent is pretty much an illusion. My oldest kept popping in, asking random questions like, "Why are you taking a bath?" and "Why are you lying in the tub?" It was amusing but also distracting. Eventually, I got a bit restless and thought, why not try to hold my breath underwater? Back in the day, I could usually manage around 100 seconds, but I used to push past 2 minutes. I asked my son to time me, claiming, "Dad's going to show you how it's done." To prep, I hyperventilated a little, mimicking what freedivers do, taking quick, deep breaths to fill my lungs. As I submerged, I heard my son laughing, but the next thing I knew, I was being pulled out of the water by him, coughing and sputtering like I'd been thrown back on land. Apparently, I had passed out. My son recounted later that around the 90-second mark, he started poking me, trying to ensure I didn't win. When he didn't get any response, he panicked and physically dragged me up. After some quick research, I learned that hyperventilating like I did is dangerous because it disguises the body's need for air. Instead of feeling the urge to breathe, I just blacked out. The rest of the day, my son reenacted my near drowning for laughs while my wife rolled her eyes at my idiocy. She insisted I see a doctor the next day to rule out any serious issues. Honestly, I'm just grateful my kid was there. Otherwise, I'd likely be another ridiculous case for the Darwin Awards.
Decided to get a big tattoo after a wild night and ended up fainting at the train station. I had a big tattoo planned for the day and thought I could handle it all in one session. Normally, you'd want to eat well and stay hydrated before getting a tattoo because it can be tough on the body. Plus, good sleep is crucial. But I didn't follow those rules. After a late night at a party, I woke up with just 4 hours of sleep and couldn't manage to get back to bed. Since I was on a diet, I only had a light breakfast before heading to the tattoo parlor, which meant I started the day pretty low on energy. While waiting for the artist to set up, I felt a little tired but figured I could manage lying on my side for a few hours while getting the tattoo done. A few hours later, I left the parlor feeling decent, albeit not finished with the entire piece. I wandered around the city, popped into a pharmacy, and grabbed a coffee. But while I was at the train station an hour later, I began feeling lightheaded, so I rested against a wall for a few minutes. When it was time to head to the platform, I got up, started walking, and then suddenly fainted. I woke up on the ground, my head thumping, bleeding from a nasty cut, and surrounded by onlookers and a few folks trying to help. They called an ambulance, and I ended up in the emergency room, where I received 13 stitches in my eyebrow, leaving me with a gnarly scar and a headache. Thankfully, I avoided a concussion. I finally made it home about 5 hours after finishing my tattoo, feeling pain in places I expected, and some I didn't. Now, I just have to get the stitches removed and plan to finish the tattoo in a few weeks. Drunk me thought using my sister's bathroom was a good idea, but I was so wrong. This story took place yesterday around 2 a.m. After a wild night out, I found myself in an Uber heading home. Completely blackout drunk. I live with my sister, and while we have separate bathrooms, mine is downstairs and hers is just down the hall from my room. Feeling too lazy to go downstairs, I made the questionable decision to use her bathroom. I stumbled over there without turning on the light, and as you can probably guess, I completely missed the toilet. I ended up splattering pee everywhere, ruining some of her makeup and soaking her bathroom mat. When morning rolled around, my sister woke up to a horrible smell and quickly figured out what had happened. She dragged me out of bed to show me the mess I'd made. Still hungover and groggy, I stood there mortified, unable to believe what I'd done. Of course, I cleaned up the entire bathroom and replaced her ruined makeup, plus a little extra, as an apology. Thankfully, she took it pretty well despite the huge inconvenience. It was definitely a wake-up call for me to think twice before drinking so much again. Drunk me thought using my sister's bathroom was a good idea, but I was so wrong. This story took place yesterday around 2 a.m. After a wild night out, I found myself in an Uber heading home. Completely blackout drunk. I live with my sister, and while we have separate bathrooms, mine is downstairs and hers is just down the hall from my room. Feeling too lazy to go downstairs, I made the questionable decision to use her bathroom. I stumbled over there without turning on the light, and as you can probably guess, I completely missed the toilet. I ended up splattering pee everywhere, ruining some of her makeup and soaking her bathroom mat. When morning rolled around, my sister woke up to a horrible smell and quickly figured out what had happened. She dragged me out of bed to show me the mess I'd made. Still hungover and groggy, I stood there mortified, unable to believe what I'd done. Of course, I cleaned up the entire bathroom and replaced her ruined makeup, plus a little extra as an apology. Thankfully, she took it pretty well despite the huge inconvenience. It was definitely a wake-up call for me to think twice before drinking so much again. I accidentally congratulated an NBA player on a baby they didn't lose, not the playoffs. This happened a while back, and it's a story I've kept to myself, but I think it's time to share. One morning, I was excited to see a fellow parent, who also happened to be an NBA player, during drop-off at preschool. It's not often you get to catch them for a chat, since his wife usually handled the morning duties. They were a friendly family, and we had a light rapport that usually led to brief conversations. As I approached him, I suddenly remembered hearing about the birth of their new child, so I blurted out, "Hey, congratulations!" He nodded with a tight, polite smile, which immediately felt a bit off. I thought maybe my excitement didn't come across properly. I was just about to follow up when the teacher leaned in and whispered, "Hey, they lost." My heart sank and my mind raced. I turned to the teacher, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over me. "What do you mean?" "They lost it last night," she said, her expression a mix of confusion and sympathy. I felt my eyes welling up as I tried to hold it together. I turned back to the dad and stammered, "I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry." "Thanks," he replied quietly and started to walk away. Still in shock, I faced the teacher, pressing my forehead in disbelief. "I can't believe I just congratulated him." "It's okay," she replied, although she seemed to think I was overreacting. "I think he's just really sad." "Well, I would think so," I shot back. "Yeah, they got pretty far, but last night was the end of the playoffs for them." In that instant, my mind did a complete 180. I had totally neglected the NBA playoffs while being caught up in the baby news. The baby was fine. Relief washing over me, I blinked away tears and asked, "So they didn't lose the baby?" "What? No!" the teacher exclaimed, realization hitting her. As I processed everything, I started laughing and crying at the same time. "I'm never talking again," I declared amidst the emotional chaos. What a wild ride that morning turned out to be. I feel awful for my boyfriend after he accidentally sent a rash photo to his work chat. I need to vent about something my boyfriend just went through. He's been away for a couple of weeks for a work team building event. We were on the phone chatting about a rash he's had in his private area since before he left, and I asked him to send me a photo so I could check it out. A few minutes later, he started screaming and told me he accidentally sent the picture to his work group chat. This group includes 2 company representatives and around 16 guys from his program, plus 1 girl. He quickly deleted it on WhatsApp, and luckily it seems that only one of the guys saw it, who took it in stride. I can't help feeling guilty since I was the one who prompted him to send the picture. It was late, so I'm praying most of them were asleep. But still, this is a pretty awkward situation. How bad is this for him? Edit. Thank you all for the supportive comments. I just feel so terrible for him. Imagine being in a new country, trying to bond with teammates, and then this happens. I can't be by his side right now, so he'll just have to ride this out until morning and see what happens. We'll get through it together. I lost over 230 pounds, but now I'm stuck at customs because I look too different for my passport. I used to be morbidly obese, tipping the scales at over 400 pounds. Over the last year, I've worked hard and dropped down to 170 pounds. My passport photo was taken when I was at my heaviest, and now I look completely different. My face, body, and even my jawline have all changed dramatically. When I arrived at customs, the officer took one look at my passport and then back at me and frowned. He bombarded me with questions and asked for extra ID before calling over another officer. I mentioned my weight loss, but they didn't seem convinced. They pulled me aside for additional screening. Here's where things got more complicated. I don't have any old photos to prove what I used to look like. When I started my weight loss journey, I deleted every single picture that reminded me of my past. I didn't take progress photos because I didn't want to look back. The officers asked if I could call a family member for an old picture, but I don't have anyone who kept those kinds of memories. My parents have mostly been out of my life, and my close friends weren't the type to snap full-body photos of me. My social media only has profile pictures, and I changed those as soon as I lost weight. I even tried to show them my Instagram. I had erased my past completely from social media. There's nothing left to validate my story. They asked for more ID, but my driver's license was updated after my weight loss, so it reflects my current appearance. My credit cards don't have photos, and I didn't have any documents with me that show my previous weight. Now, I'm stuck waiting while they attempt to verify my identity. I'm not sure how long this process will take, and I can't help but feel helpless not being able to prove who I was. I made a joke about my boss's haircut, and now I'm pretty sure I need a new job. Today was one for the books, and I might need to reconsider my resume. While at work, a few coworkers and I were having a lighthearted chat about terrible haircuts. One guy made a joke about how his barber must really dislike him. I chimed in, saying, "Yeah, some barbers just seem to sabotage their clients." That's when my boss, who's usually pretty chill but not super talkative, walked up and caught the tail end of our conversation. He laughed and then added, "Yeah, my wife just gave me this haircut last night." I glanced at his hair. It was a sight uneven, with strange patches that looked like a clipper's disaster. Panic set in, and instead of keeping my mouth shut, I blurted out, "Oh, well, at least she tried." Awkward silence ensued. My boss just nodded and walked off. One of my coworkers leaned over and whispered, "Dude, stop talking." For the next 10 minutes, I stared blankly at my computer, replaying the whole cringeworthy moment in my mind. Ever since, my boss hasn't said a word to me. I'm seriously contemplating packing up my desk just in case. I thought closing my car door was harmless until my groin disagreed with me big time. I should start by clarifying that this is not a story about anything sexual, and my anatomy isn't particularly noteworthy, yet I somehow managed to injure myself in a rather unfortunate way. It all began when I went out for lunch. While I was saying hi to a couple of people, I leaned across the roof of my car while closing the door. I was wearing some loose shorts, and in a stroke of bad luck, I unintentionally slammed the door into my groin. Mid-wave, I yelped, "Oh no!" and doubled over in front of several witnesses. In that moment, I wasn't sure how to react. It was embarrassing, to say the least. I tried to carry on like nothing happened, but once I got home and took a closer look, I discovered a worrying injury, a 1 to 2 centimeters long gash on my right side, right across the delicate area. Now I'm left hoping for a swift recovery and trying to figure out how to navigate around that location without feeling mortified. I thought nonce meant coward, and embarrassed myself in front of friends and a nurse. A while back, when I was about 25, I had no clue what the word nonce actually meant. I thought it was just a fancy term for coward or wimp. One day, I joked that someone should stop being a nonce, which led to a furious reaction from them. People nearby asked why I would say that, and when I explained my misunderstanding, someone kindly told me it meant something much worse. Pedophile. I was mortified and apologized profusely. Thankfully, everyone laughed it off and we moved on. But here's where it gets even more cringeworthy. A few months earlier, I had a moment that made me realize how badly I misunderstood this word. I was getting stitches removed from my back, and I warned the nurse that if I whimpered, she should just ignore me because I was being intending to say wimp. I can only imagine how she felt when I called myself that. Now it haunts me to think about all the times I might have used nonce incorrectly, not realizing the impact. I'm British, so I know this is common knowledge here, which makes my mistake feel even sillier. I'm just hoping I didn't say it in any other awkward situations without realizing it. I thought washing veggies with dish soap was smart, until it nearly sent me to the ER. Last year, I spent almost a month in the ICU battling a serious case of leptospirosis. In my recovery, I developed a bit of trauma that led me to wash my vegetables with dish soap. One day, while preparing a shakshuka, some soap residue got onto the veggies. Not long after I ate, I ended up in the bathroom feeling awful, struggling to vomit, and dealing with an intense stomachache. I was seriously considering calling 911. Fortunately, the discomfort didn't last long since I rinsed the veggies well. But I learned firsthand that even minimal traces can wreak havoc on your body. Looking back, I realize how misguided my approach was. I thought washing veggies with dish soap would get rid of bacteria, but I found out it does almost nothing. It's pretty scary to think that such a small mistake could have landed me in the ER again. So, I'm sharing this as a cautionary tale. Please remember that the best way to clean your vegetables is simply rinsing them under fresh water or using a designated veggie cleaning solution. It's not worth risking your health over something so basic.
I tried paying for sex for the first time and it turned into a total nightmare. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and up until yesterday, I had done my fair share of dating and hookups, but I'd never paid for sex before. I've typically thought that those who sell their bodies must really be in a tough spot. But after my experience, I felt like I'd taken advantage of someone's vulnerability. Honestly, I usually manage any urges I have, but I reached a point where I decided to seek out a sex worker instead of just handling things on my own. I connected with a woman who informed me she only sees clients at her flat, so I headed there feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. When I arrived, she greeted me, but her voice sounded completely different from what I heard on the phone. As we moved toward the room, I spotted a guy on the couch who welcomed me as if he knew I was coming. That instantly weirded me out. I'd never realized I was talking to a man on the phone. As I followed her into a cramped room, I could tell they were living in pretty rough conditions. Things took a turn for the worse once I asked to use the bathroom. I walked in and couldn't believe my eyes. There was a filthy toilet and a bathtub filled with literal human waste. I was out of there in a flash. I quickly made an excuse, pretending I'd forgotten my wallet, and thankfully, she didn't push back too hard. I told her maybe next time, but trust me, there won't be a next time. I've never walked so fast in my life as I rushed back to my car and drove away. That was my first and definitely my last attempt at this kind of thing. I can't even imagine what worse surprises I might have faced if I had stuck around.
Just realized I accidentally recorded my call while scrolling TikTok, and it's so cringy I'm in a total panic right now. I just wrapped up a major project call that was being recorded. Usually, I have my computer and phone going to take advantage of the better audio on my phones. So at the end of the meeting, I hung up on my computer but forgot to disconnect the phone. It's a rookie mistake. And honestly, I think the intensity of this project got to me. Once the call was over, I kicked back in my chair and opened TikTok to chill out after talking for so long. I mindlessly scrolled for about 15 minutes, only to suddenly realize that the recording was still active. I rushed to shut it off, but somehow, most of my TikTok scrolling must not have been picked up because of the noise suppression. Unfortunately, the one clip that did get recorded, it's Amy Poehler and Rashida Jones chatting about that movie, and the line that got caught is, "5 orgasm sex scene is so intense. Of all the random videos I could have been watching, why did this have to be the one?" It's just embarrassing, and while the context isn't terrible, I'm still freaking out. I have no idea how to handle this. If I try to delete or edit it, I might draw more attention to it, which is the last thing I want. As of now, no one has seen it, and I'm hoping they won't bother pulling up the transcript. I can't help but imagine how annoyed I'll be if this actually gets me fired. I have a solid track record at work, so maybe it'll just be one of those cringe moments that blow over. Fingers crossed no one pays much attention to it. At worst, it's a bit embarrassing. And at best, no one even sees it. Just realized I left my room a disaster for the pest control guy, and I'm mortified. Today started off busy, and I, 26F, was in a rush to get out of my apartment. With everything going on, I didn't bother to tidy up and figured I'd deal with it later. Living alone meant it was no big deal. Around lunchtime, I got a call from my building's office letting me know that the pest control guy was coming by, just like he does every few months. I casually acknowledged the call, since I've let him in before when I was home. We usually chat a bit, and he's super polite and helpful, always willing to check extra spots if I ask. He's about my parents' age, so I didn't think much of it. After grabbing lunch, I headed home to let my dog out. As I walked into my room, I was hit with a wave of shock. I had left my toys out to dry from this morning, along with my iPad, headphones, and even my underwear, all sprawled across my bed. It was clear as day what had happened in that room before he arrived. Now, I'm dreading the thought of running into him again. If he comes back for any reason, I'll have to hide my face in embarrassment. From now on, I'll make sure to check the community app more often for notifications about pest control visits. Life lesson learned. Thought I had a classy way to smoke, now my neighbor thinks I'm doing crack. I'm Canadian, so just to clarify, this isn't about anything deliberately illegal. 3 months ago, I decided that while I enjoy weed, I wanted to cut down on smoking papers. I tried vapes, but they weren't my style. Good ones are bulky, and I prefer not to smoke indoors. Bongs weren't a fit either. I headed to my local head shop and asked for alternatives to rolling papers. I know about pipes, but I didn't trust aluminum and wanted something without pothead designs. The shopkeeper pulled out a sleek glass tube about the size of a large pen. It had a glass separator with a hole on one end meant for filling with herbs. He assured me the design would prevent any poorly cut herbs from passing through, and suggested using steel wool as a filter if needed. It looked classy, was easy to hold with one hand, and I bought it on the spot. I even picked up some steel wool pads from a grocery store next door, thinking I had a winner. For the last 3 months, I've been using this glass pipe on my back porch a few times a week. It allows me to control my intake better than a joint, I'm not inhaling paper, and it's a breeze to clean. I loved it. Fast forward to today. My neighbor struck up a conversation. Out of the blue, he asked me if everything was okay and if my girlfriend was cool with my new habit. He even suggested I might need help. I was puzzled. Everything was fine, and I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. Then he said, "I know you enjoy weed, but escalating to crack will ruin you." I was utterly confused, insisting that I've never touched anything like that, and that my 3 to 4 joints a week was enough, surely not too much. He then dropped the bomb. He and his wife had been watching me use my crack pipe from their kitchen window for months. At that moment, everything clicked. I had been unknowingly smoking out of a crack pipe while thinking I was all good. I felt a wave of shame and anger, not only at the shopkeeper for selling me that piece, but also at myself for using it where my neighbors could watch. I'm honestly embarrassed to smoke on the porch now and might take a break for a while. Just tossed my $300 shower head by mistake, and now I can't stop cringing over it. Today has been one of those days where I just want to peel my skin off. Seriously, I messed up big time. So, I recently took a trip to Japan, which was a huge deal for me. It wasn't easy to make it happen. And while I was there, I decided to treat myself to something I rarely do. I splurged on a $300 shower head. It was high-tech and felt like the ultimate luxury, so I thought, why not? Fast forward to today. I tried to install the fancy shower head, but it wouldn't fit because a piece inside was broken. No biggie, I thought. I could just buy a replacement part, but I kept procrastinating. I told myself I could wait another day, and days turned into weeks. Finally, I went out to get the part, but that's when everything went sideways. Before leaving, I gathered some junk around my place to throw away, including torn pants and other random stuff. I set the shower head down with the pile, thinking I'd move it later. Of course, I forgot, and ended up tossing everything, including that shower head. So, there it was. My $300 investment, just thrown away. I can't believe I did that. Now I'm sitting here, staring into space, grappling with just how badly I messed up. Have you ever been in a situation where you just question everything? That's exactly where I am right now.
I recorded my neighbor's late-night escapade, and now my fiancé is mortified. I woke up around 1 a.m. to the sound of a woman screaming. At first, I thought it was a domestic disturbance, so I got out of bed to figure out what was going on. After about 5 minutes, I realized my initial guess was way off. Amid the shrieks of, "Yes, yes," it became clear someone was having an incredible night. This didn't sound like any typical noise. It was more intense, almost like a scene from a movie. Given the quiet nature of my neighbors, I seriously doubted anyone would be blaring a film that loud at such an hour. In my sleepy haze, it felt like a unique moment worth capturing, so I pulled out my phone and recorded the audio. The next morning, I told my fiancée about my late-night wake-up call, and she was mortified when I mentioned the recording. Looking back, I get it. It was a creepy thing to do. In the moment, I thought it was funny, but I can see how it crossed a line. I've deleted the recordings, and the incident has made my fiancée uneasy. Now, she wants me to discuss it in therapy. We're already in couples therapy, and I'm also seeking individual support since I've been dealing with some personal issues. So yeah, I messed up, and now I have to navigate this uncomfortable situation with my fiancé. Caught in a seating dilemma on the train, and it turned into a public spectacle. It just happened. I was coming back from work when I hit some train delays, leading to a packed car. Thankfully, I managed to snag a seat right at the front. As the train filled up, people started standing between the seats. That's when a woman stood next to me. I stole a quick glance at her, and she looked back a bit, but I turned away to avoid any awkwardness. After a moment, I started watching something on my phone, but then it hit me. She seemed, well, for lack of a better term, healthy. That made me wonder if she might be pregnant and hoping I'd give up my seat. So I decided to take a closer look, but the moment I glanced down at her belly and looked back, I caught her checking me out. Now I was confused. Was she pregnant or just heavyset? I faced a dilemma. If I gave her my seat and she wasn't pregnant, I'd look like a jerk who judged her size. But if she really was pregnant and I stayed seated, I'd still come off as an inconsiderate guy. I remembered the golden rule: assume someone is just heavy and not pregnant. As I pondered my next move, an elderly lady on the other side of the aisle stood up and offered her seat to the woman with a loud comment, saying, "What a time to be alive, where healthy guys don't even give seats to pregnant women and someone in their 70s has to." She wasn't looking anywhere but at me. The woman who received the seat said thank you and shot me a look. Feeling the heat, I quickly stood up to offer my seat to the elderly lady, but she wouldn't accept it. Just my luck.
Accidentally sent my mom an inappropriate sticker on WhatsApp, and now I'm in full panic mode. I was just trying to call my mom on WhatsApp when, in a total brain freeze, my fingers hit the stickers tab instead. Out of the countless stickers available, I somehow managed to send one depicting an anime girl in a rather compromising position. The moment I saw it, I felt like I had left my body. I quickly deleted the message, hoping against hope that she hadn't noticed, but then, she logged on a lot faster than I anticipated. Did she see it? Was she about to call me out on it? Panic kicked in. 5 agonizing minutes later, I decided to call her and casually ask what was for dinner. She sounded completely normal. No signs of hesitation or awkwardness in her voice. Maybe I was in the clear? Or perhaps she just decided to act like nothing happened. Regardless, I've learned my lesson. I will never explore WhatsApp stickers around my mom again. This is a heads up to all my fellow friends who enjoy sharing silly content. Just be careful with those stickers.